This is an evaluation report. The evaluation looks at how the international community responded to droughts in Ethiopia. It helps us understand how well the international community did and how it can do even better when the next crisis hits. Ethiopia suffers periodically from droughts. Recently, there were two very severe ones, one in 2015 and one in 2017. These droughts are particularly devastating because 2/3 of the population rely primarily on agriculture or grazing animals for a living. The Ethiopian government therefore launched a large humanitarian response, and the international community provided support. We are talking about roughly $1 billion in humanitarian assistance every year since 2016. So, how well did this work? As you can imagine, it was a challenge to mount such a large response quickly. We asked over 500 Ethiopians in different regions of the country when they got assistance. 41% said they had to wait for more than 5 months. Only 4% were assisted within a month. Now, you may ask, how good or bad is this? We can say with some certainty that this was good enough to help save many lives. The majority of Ethiopians we talked to said that more people in their family would have died without assistance. Also, several 100,000 children were treated for severe acute malnutrition, and fewer than 3% died. This meets international standards. However, the response was not fast enough to prevent other negative effects. Almost everybody lost animals or crops, and many people became ill. So what can the international community do to respond faster? We already have the systems that help us see the droughts coming. What we need is follow-up on this information. This is the responsibility of the Ethiopia Humanitarian Country Team, the main coordination body for humanitarian agencies working in Ethiopia. It is also critical to get the money flowing early. For that, donors should live up to their commitment to provide more flexible funding. We also found that so-called crisis modifiers are very helpful. They allow organizations to redirect development funding when a crisis hits. It should therefore become a standard to have such crisis modifiers. Another aspect we wanted to understand is whether people got the right kind of assistance. 2/3 of the people we surveyed said that they got what they needed most. That's pretty good. However, there are also many who would have wished for a more sustainable kind of support. For example, seeds and fertilizer, help for the animals, or other means to earn a living. Not being able to deliver more on this is the biggest regret of humanitarian workers and the government. For the future, we therefore recommend more focus on resilience and livelihoods. This is difficult to achieve. Among others, we need to give people cash rather than food wherever this is possible, invest in alternative livelihoods where traditional lifestyles no longer work, and strengthen the role and funding of those organizations that provide this kind of support. Another issue was the lack of accountability of the response. Many people, including their representatives, do not know what they are supposed to receive or when. Because of this, they often have to wait for a long time at distribution points, and they cannot protest if they don't get what they should. The same is true for the response as a whole. Important data does not exist, for example, on malnutrition or mortality rates. Other data, for example, on how much food or water was delivered, is available. But our consistency check shows that this data is not reliable. As a result, we often don't know who received what, let alone what effect this had. A crucial recommendation the evaluation makes is therefore to make the response more accountable. By informing affected people, regularly surveying them, and enabling them to complain. Finally, We wanted to understand if the response reached the right people. Most people felt that the assistance was distributed in a fair way and reached those who needed it most. It is interesting that women were generally more content with the response than men. Elderly people, by contrast, were less content, and there were signs that they were at times left out. The biggest concern, however, was that poor people were left out. Studies show that humanitarian assistance tends to be spread more evenly across communities in Ethiopia, rather than focus on the poorest. To change that, we make suggestions to continue to improve the analysis of who needs assistance most urgently. Overall, we found that the response was slow in the beginning, but then ramped up to become really large in scale and helped save many lives. It is striking, though, that most problems we found in the evaluation had been identified before. This shows just how difficult it is to act on lessons. To try and get out of this trap, there will be a thorough follow-up process to this evaluation. The humanitarian country team and the humanitarian coordinator in Ethiopia will formally decide how to react to the recommendations and then periodically report on progress. We also suggest that policymakers at the global level focus on what has been holding back reforms so that we can start to address those obstacles to change. If you want to read the whole report, you can find it here. And if you have any questions or want to discuss the findings with us, just send me a message.